Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today. We're doing something a little bit different in this video. Normally when news breaks, I like to re-report it like many other content creators, but then I had this novel idea. I was like, hey, I'm friends with a lot of the people who are reporting these very stories. And to kind of bridge that gap between YouTubers and press and have a more extended conversation, get more information straight from the horse's mouth, I thought, why not try to occasionally, this won't always be a thing, invite them on the channel, whoever had written that story, and get their ideas, their thoughts on the leaks that have occurred. So for those who are unaware, recently a brand new Obsidian RPG has just leaked, courtesy of Jeff Grubb, and Jeff is joining me in today's video. So Jeff, thank you so much for making time for this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. I found this out via good old Reddit, where Josh Sawyer's game has some details via Grubsnacks. Would you like to go into them and we'll talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I was getting these details, and then I was checking into it to make sure. I'm like, okay, let's see what else is out there already. And the thing is, with this story, a lot of the stuff he has said before, and it was kind of nice to just be able to reiterate and say, yeah, he's still making that game he said he was making. So that game being a historical RPG is kind of how he described it back, I think back in like 2016 or something like that. He's like, oh, he's like, that's what I've always wanted to do. So turns out he's still making that exact game. It's set in 16th century Europe, and it's he also said previously in the past that it's not going to have combat. That is also still very true. It's also like a key bullet point when they are talking about this game with people. And it's like, so, you know, they're kind of working backwards from that. Like, what is it? I think with a Josh Sawyer game, you can kind of figure out, like, it's going to be a lot of characters interacting through dialogue options, and that is basically going to be the entirety of the game. Really, the nut here is this is a murder mystery RPG set in 16th century Europe. I think that's kind of the quick elevator pitch, and to me it sounds interesting. Exactly, it sounds very cool. I'm someone who, like, when I think about these kinds of games that you know Josh Sawyer could make, I want something where, you know, you are going to be manipulating people through dialogue, and I think that's exactly what they're trying to make here. Now, there's also talk of like experimental stuff that they're trying to do with this, and you know, it's a small team, and so they're trying to remain lean and you know, sort of nimble. I don't know what any of that might entail. I'm kind of think it's probably going to come out and still be pretty much the RPG you can imagine in your head, but maybe there's some other elements there that we just don't know yet. But so far, it sounds like a really good idea. Absolutely.
One of the first questions I wanted to ask you is, do you feel like this is likely Disco Elysium inspired? We know that Josh has been at the head of Pillars of Eternity, Fallout New Vegas famously, and since then he's sort of gone to his own little niche, if you will, and worked on a specific type of RPG. So would you say that after Disco came out and it was also monumentally successful, that this was sort of the kickstart for Obsidian to make a tighter RPG like this?
Yeah, I don't know if it necessarily like went like in that order of, you know, this happened and then therefore they're like, now let's do something like that. But I bet at the very least it was encouraging to say, hey, the thing that we're working on can succeed because look at what Disco Elysium is doing. But I think Disco Elysium is absolutely like the right sort of signpost to be pointing to say like what they're thinking here. A game that is very, you know, there's still a ton of like mechanics happening there, but there's not really combat. It is just a game where people are conversating, and you're dealing with your own thoughts and stuff, and that's like kind of where this emotional combat happens almost. And there's like a lot of space to explore there, other things that could have been done, and it seems like, yeah, I think they are feeling very encouraged by what Disco Elysium is doing.
Awesome. And this is kind of a sign of what we have been hearing about Xbox lately with working with Obsidian is the report was like 7 games in 7 years, and obviously not all of them are going to be presumably Avowed size or the Outer Worlds 2 size, so they're going to do it this way. You said as small teams working on it, would Grounded be a good reference point? Like, are they starting off with, say, I think Grounded was 13 or 12 people at the very beginning and scaling up?
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't know if this one's ever going to like fully scale up. Obviously, to get over the finish line, they're going to have to, you know, get all the content created and you know all the art assets created, and that requires working with more people on the team and bringing in, you know, outside external developers and stuff to actually finish that stuff. But I think that it's as Grounded sort of scaling up. I don't know if that's what was ever the plan here. I think they wanted to remain this small and tight and just do something interesting and off to the side for sure. But I mean, you know, to your point though, you know, scaling up. This is something that they are planning to release in 2022. At least, you know, that's the plan.
Ask that next. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that would be 2 effectively full launches for Obsidian in 2022 if we want to count Grounded reaching version 1.0.
And we should, because that is a plan as well. Like that's Grounded 1.0 coming out in 2022. It's one of the games they're considering as part of their release calendar. So yes, I think that's a good way of putting it.
With that in mind, do you know if this is going to be on consoles by chance? Because I know Josh Sawyer is a big PC RPG fan, and again, like Pillar started off on PC, Tyranny PC. So I'm wondering, is this something that console fans, do you know if they're going to be able to play this or not?
I don't know. It would just be a guess, but I would say probably. I would say probably, because I mean, Microsoft's giving them a lot of freedom, right? Giving them a lot of money, giving them a lot of freedom, and those things can go. People have arguments about whether or not that freedom is entirely a good thing, of like just letting these studios do what they want. But I think for the most part, it's going to lead to situations where we get cool experimental games like this. But then at the end, Microsoft will be like, hey, we need content for Game Pass, and we need content for Game Pass on console. So I still think, like, even if your core team is busy making the PC version, let us help figure out ways to get the console port ready as well. And really, you know, all that stuff's already in place internally, of like making sure that stuff can get ported very easily. So I would imagine it's PC and console, but that's just a guess. I don't know that.
Okay. See, I wasn't aware of that Microsoft was kind of in on that front, where eventually they're going to, I don't want to say pressure. That almost has a negative connotation, but like, hey, we need this for Game Pass, so we need to figure it out.
Those are just the incentives, right? Those are the motivations. This is what this is their, you know, modus operandi of the reason they're doing everything. We're getting content to put on Game Pass. So mostly they think, hey, we want to empower creators. They're very much, they really believe that stuff. But then, you know, at a certain point, the rubber meets the road and all that stuff, and they're like, we got to make this stuff make sense to that extent. And that doesn't mean like the thing where like, oh, to make it make sense, you spent $7 billion on all this Bethesda stuff, you should put it on PlayStation. That's not what it means. It just means making Game Pass make sense. Absolutely.
With this game, you said 16th century European setting, according to the Reddit bullet points, by the way. This was something that you had said that Josh had been interested in for quite some time. Do you think this was something he would have been able to do if Obsidian were independent, or was it really primarily based off the Microsoft acquisition that they were granted a level of freedom financially where they could say, look, we're going to do Grounded, we're going to do this game, we're going to also do Avowed. Of course, you know, the Outer Worlds 2, I think, kind of sells itself in a manner of speaking, but do you think all of this even this kind of more, again, niche idea of murder mystery RPG, 16th century, was only possible, if you will, through Xbox and Microsoft's inclusion of knowing there's almost that safety net there?
Yeah, I do think it empowers them to accelerate these side concepts. And what I think happens here is, you know, Josh Sawyer is the kind of person that I think they want being sort of a mentor to the next generation of their creators at Obsidian. And so, I think that they can like kind of kill two birds with one stone there, where like, hey, let's empower him to make the game he wants to make, and at the same time, let's let him pass on some of his best practices to the people who are going to work on sequels to Avowed down the line or whatever. Like if we're going to have these people like sort of move up the totem pole and get to a point where they can overtake these projects and kind of let Josh Sawyer continue to have this freedom, you know, let's figure out a process to make that happen. And I think that's kind of part of this, where this is like, let him make the thing he wants to make while also, you know, coaching up a new generation of creators that we can rely on in the future.
I'm sure Josh has probably talked about this at some point, but are you aware by chance of, you know, after New Vegas, right, this monumental open world RPG, and since then he's, as I said, scaled down. I think the complexity is scaled up a little bit, but do you know why he's sort of kind of backed away, and even though he's so talented and prominent in the company, he's working on these smaller, tighter projects? I don't know. He probably has talked about this, and I haven't seen it, but you know, it would just be a guess, kind of based on like what I think he just wants to be doing stuff that is the things he's interested in, but also like moving that stuff forward, and that is not always something that lines up with spending $100 million making a blockbuster game, right? Yeah, it's like you want to make those sure bets. Like, you know, you look at the way like professional gamblers work, and this is all the same thing with business. Like, if they get something that they think has like a 55% odds of return or something, they'll go out and take massive loans out to put, because that's like, those are such good odds that you're gonna get, like, but like they're looking just for like that smidge of like the chance that something might succeed, and you have to maximize all of those chances. And so that's what businesses are looking for, maximizing all the smallest possibilities to make a game succeed. And
that means you're going to look back at what's succeeded in the past. And so that's exactly the opposite of what I think Josh Sawyer is trying to pursue here, which is, let's try something that hasn't worked before. Let's see if we can make the next thing. And I think that everyone involved understands that that's valuable, and that having someone creative like that pursuing goals like that is something that could lead to the next big thing. But it's not necessarily a thing that you put the $100 million on up front, right?
Yeah, and especially now that you mentioned it, it's probably valuable because I remember him saying that Pillars of Eternity 2, I believe it was, didn't do really that well. So them trying something new is probably good for him as well to find that success. I just do have 2 more questions. The first one would be about choice and consequence. I'm assuming this will be heavily driven by that.
Yeah, that's the impression I got from the kind of the notes I was taking, that it was it's very much about, like, you're going to go have dialogue conversations that are going to be able to branch with all these different characters. And I'm not sure if there's like sort of like Outer Wilds, like it has a board over here that says, here's all the stuff you discovered, or if it's stuff you're supposed to keep in your head. I don't know about that, but you are supposed to be gathering this information in order to make accusations of who committed this murder. And then after that, it's not like, if you get it wrong, it's not game over. There will be consequences that you are going to have to live with in the game if you get it wrong. Now, I'm not sure if that's like different endings, and then like it's like 15 minutes of gameplay where it's like, here's, you could see the consequences, or if it's like the game just keeps going until you get it right or something like that. But either way, it's like, yeah, they definitely, consequences is a very big thing here.
Awesome. And as for the 2022 release, right, we know Grounded's coming, and when do you think both these games will end up landing? Because they obviously have to spread them out. Do you think this releases in a quieter time of the year? Does it release over the summer?
Yeah, it's so, you look at Microsoft's release calendar for the entire year. They have Redfall, they have Forza Motorsport 8, and they have Starfield, and then they're going to have these smaller games, Grounded going 1.0, and now this, and there's a few others. There's what is it, Stalker 2 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is that Grounded goes in like a quiet period in the first half of the year, and then this goes in a quiet period, maybe late summer, sometime after that. Like it's probably not something, or it's kind of thing that could end up like, hey, we'll put it out in December or whatever. It'll be our December game. I just think it's there's every chance that this is going to get delayed into 2023 as well, because small team trying experimental stuff. They're looking for the fun, all that stuff. But if it does come out next year, I think it'll be after Grounded, second half of the year. Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, again, what's the rush when I doubt there's anticipation, but from a very specific group of people, that's definitely not like mainstream or widespread. So there's not like I think a marketing period they need to capitalize on here. So
I think you're right.
And just actually, this came to mind. When it comes to announcements, do you think this just kind of happens? Do you think it's a showcase level announcement?
I always say that Xbox loves announcements. Like, it's the thing that they've been the best at for the last like 2 years. They love like making news. So I think they'll try to find a way to make this into a thing through an announcement. When and where that can happen, I don't know. I feel like they're probably not going to bring it to the Game Awards, right? But it's the kind of thing where they could almost announce it like at GDC, right? It's the kind of thing that feels like it's a game developer's game sort of thing. And so let Josh Sawyer go and like do a panel at GDC and talk about this thing, and then you announce it simultaneously with the press or whatever, with an embargo or something like that.
Sure.
But I don't know for sure. That was kind of a guess.
Okay, I just figured I'd pick your brain on that. That's all the questions I have, though, Jeff. Thank you so much for lending your time, your knowledge, your wisdom here on this video, and hopefully we can do this again, and we can get other voices in here to pick their brains about different leaks and information that we have out there. But Jeff, thank you for being the kickstart for this. I really appreciate it, man.
No, thanks for having me, man. And yeah, I look forward to future episodes. I'll definitely be interested to see like who you talk to next. That's great.
We'd love to hear it. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Of course, fire away with constructive criticism, any feedback you have on how I can do this a little bit better, because I'm sure I could in some way, shape, or form. Maybe asking the audience for questions. That'd be great. But let me know, and I'm looking forward to seeing those thoughts. Until then, take good care of yourselves, and I'll talk with you very soon. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.